This 20-minute pelvic floor prep for birth workout is what I did during my pregnancy to help prepare my pelvic floor for my labor. And I ended up having a 90-minute long active labor, only pushed 5 times, and I didn't tear at all. My baby was in an amazing position, and I know the exercises that I was doing during my pregnancy helped to facilitate all of this. Welcome to the MamasteFit YouTube channel. In this workout video, we're going to be talking about how you can prepare your pelvic floor for birth with exercises that I personally did during my pregnancy to not only support a comfortable pregnancy, but also to support my labor and then my recovery in the postpartum period. If you enjoy these workouts, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified whenever we release new videos. We release new workout videos on Tuesdays every week. So let's talk about the pelvic floor, particularly what I was doing during my pregnancy to release tension within the pelvic floor to prepare for birth. For me, the right half of my pelvic floor was overactive, and so it was working a lot. So I had to do a lot of exercises to target this right half to offload it so that it could release to support my baby's position. I also have a very tight back half of my pelvic floor, and so I needed to do exercises that stretch this back portion of my pelvic floor. With my pelvis, the right half sits more backwards and the left half sits more forward. So my right half is in more of a closed hip position, while my left half is in a more open hip position. And because of this, it's going to impact the tension within my pelvic floor. So this left posterior portion is going to be a lot tighter, and this right portion is going to be a little bit more overactive and over lengthened. And so I'm going to be doing exercises that bring this right pelvic half more forward and the left half more back to release that uneven tension within my pelvic floor. In this 20-minute workout, we're going to start with some pelvic floor release exercises, and then we're going to get to 2 rounds on some pelvic floor strengthening exercises to help improve the movement of your pelvic floor, to decrease discomfort that you may be having, and also helping to prepare you for birth. For this workout, all we're going to need is a yoga block, and then you have an option to add on a weight if you would like for one of the movements. So once you've got your equipment, let's come down to the floor to begin our pelvic floor birth prep workout. So the first movement that we're going to do is going to be a half lunge position. So we're going to find an open hip position in this half lunge with the right leg forward. So I'm targeting the right half of my pelvic floor. I'm going to start with my foot and think there's weight in that big toe. And then I'm going to rotate to bring my belly away from this front thigh. So you're going to feel more of a stretch here in this groin. And then as you shift into that right leg, I'm going to keep thinking about opening up in that hip, feeling that stretch in that groin, and keeping that big toe down. And then you can think trying to shift your pelvis towards that left side. You can sink into it, and you can do like little rocks if you'd like, but we're going to be here for 1 minute. So we're about halfway through now. So this is helping to offload the right half of the pelvic floor to help it turn off by stretching it and releasing it and bringing a little bit more activity into the left side. We also tend to have a little bit tighter of a right groin and adductor area, and so this is also going to help with your pelvic positioning. So really keep that big toe down, really think open hip position, big stretch here in that groin, and trying to sink into that left hip. So now we're going to come down to the floor for a 90-90. So one leg is externally rotated in front, and the other leg is internally rotated behind. I'm going to start with my left leg in front and right leg behind. So we're going to do a side body opener into a side camel. We're going to do switches, and then we'll do the other side. So reach up with that left arm and then lean towards the right side. So feeling a big stretch in that left side body and a little bit more of a stretch in that right groin. And then bring that hand behind you to extend in the hip, feeling a big stretch in this hip flexor. And then come down and switch. So reaching overhead for that side body opener. Place that hand behind for that big stretch in that hip, just alternating between the two. So one of the things that could impact our pelvic position or our pelvic floor tension is how well does the other muscles that support the pelvis move. For a lot of us, the lats tend to be a little bit tighter, which can make it harder for us to find a more rounded back position, and the hip flexors can also be a little bit tighter. And this is pretty common during pregnancy. And so this exercise is targeting the lats, the side body, and the hip flexors to help improve pelvic mobility. Now place your hands behind you, and we're just going to switch the legs from side to side. You can add a little bit of a reach at the top if you want to get a little bit more into that groin. You can also keep the hands in front of you to make it a little bit more challenging. I personally find hands behind me with the reach feels best for me, but you can explore this movement. And so this movement is particularly targeting helping you find more internal and external hip rotation. So how well does that femur move within that hip socket? And we're just kind of switching from side to side. Hip mobility, pelvic mobility, spinal mobility, they all connect with one another with how the pelvis can move, how the pelvic floor is going to have tension within it. In about 5 seconds, we're going to come to the right side to do that same side camel. So right leg in front, left leg behind, reaching over for that side body opener, feeling more of that left groin stretch. Hand comes behind, stretching more of that left hip flexor. So right side body opener, left hip flexor stretch. And you may find that this side feels a little bit stickier, feels a little tighter for you. Right side might feel a little bit like it's harder to get into it. Left hip might feel a little bit harder. For a lot of us, we tend to favor that right hip back, left hip forward position, just like I do. And so you may find one side is a little stickier than the other, and that's pretty normal. We're normally asymmetrical. And so this movement is targeting those common areas of tension to help improve your pelvic mobility, to create space within your pelvis. Now we're going to come to a tabletop position, grab that yoga block, and we're going to place that yoga block underneath the left knee and then shift our weight over to the left side. So my weight is primarily on that left leg, shifting that weight over, and then drop the belly to the floor to arch from the back. Exhale, pull belly to spine to round. Inhale, belly to floor. Exhale, pull belly to spine. And so you should primarily be feeling this in this left hip pocket area or that posterior portion of the pelvic floor. This closed hip position is helping to pull the tailbone away from that left side, and it's stretching that left hip pocket area. So a lot of us tend to have a little bit more tension in the back half of our pelvic floor, particularly that left side. And so this is helping to target that and stretch it. If you're having like SI joint pain, pelvic pain, tailbone pain, really any sort of like back half of the pelvic pain, hip shifts are a really great exercise to do to help you release some tension and usually find a lot of pain relief. Now we're going to come to the right side on that yoga block. So shift that weight over. For a lot of us, the right glute tends to be a little bit weaker compared to the left. And so we're going to find a neutral position, keeping the thighs near each other in parallel. I'm going to drive that left knee straight up and then inhale to come back down. So exhale, drive that left knee straight up, inhale back down. So we're coming into a more open hip position at the top and then a closed hip position at the bottom for that right leg. So again, right leg glute tends to be a little bit weaker compared to the left. And so we're helping to move it and strengthen it into that more open hip position. So keeping the thighs parallel, drive that knee and hip straight up towards that ceiling. Try to prevent arching in your back. Sometimes there's a tendency to begin to arch here. It's really common during pregnancy. And that concludes the warm-up portion for my pelvic floor birth prep workout. You can repeat that warm-up portion really anytime throughout the week, but we're primarily targeting offloading the right half of the pelvic floor by activating the glute, by releasing tension in that inner thigh, improving hip mobility from side to side. And then we were stretching more of the posterior portion of that left pelvic floor to help release some tightness there. All of those helped me to feel more comfortable throughout my pregnancy, in addition to help prepare my pelvic floor to release for labor. So let's move into some upright positions now that I used during my labor to help release tension as I was laboring, and are really great exercises to incorporate into your prenatal workout routine. The second half of the workout is going to be pelvic floor exercises that are upright, and so these are going to be the strengthening movements that help move your pelvic floor throughout a full range of motion. We're going to need that yoga block for some standing hip shifts. You'll need one weight for some lateral hip shifts, and then you'll need a long resistance band for the archer row and press. The resistance band can either be unattached or you can have an attachment variation, and I'll show you what both look like right now. For the attachment variation, the band will be attached a little bit higher than your head. So if you're doing a door frame, you'll throw the band over the top of your door frame. We're going to reach forward with the left hand, band in the right hand. I'm going to exhale to press across my body as I kind of rotate and inhale to come back. So I'm going to press and then rotate to come back. So I'm having this rotation in the upper body, bringing me into the hips. So this is the pressing variation. For the rowing, I'm going to hold it in the left hand, and I'm going to row to come back. And I'll walk you through this as we do the workout, but I want to show it to you so that you're familiar with it before we get there. For the no attachment variation, you'll have left foot back, right foot forward. For the rowing variation, you'll hold the hands out in front and you'll row the left arm back. For the pressing variation, you'll have the band by your chest and you'll press that band forward as you maintain this anchor point here. So for pressing, we're pressing like this. If we're rowing back here. So you could choose between a no attachment variation or an attachment variation. I'm going to be demoing the attachment variation, but we'll have a video that shows you the no attachment variation as we go. So once you've gathered your yoga block, you have your weight for the lateral hip shifts, and you have your band set up for the archer row and press, let's go ahead and get started with 2 rounds of our pelvic floor strengthening exercises. So we're going to start with that standing hip shift. So you're going to place one foot on to your yoga block, and then we're going to shift our weight towards that elevated hip. So the weight is going to come a little bit back diagonally, and I'm shifting over onto that left foot. So I could lift my right foot off the floor and not really change my position. Belly is more towards that thigh. I have more weight in that big toe, and I'm holding here and feeling this big stretch in this glute, maybe down into the hamstring. So we can reach across the body, really think about rotating that pelvis on that femur, and play around with this hip shift until you feel more of a sensation and a stretch kind of in this hip glute area. And then reach both hands forward to extend in the hip and then come back into that hip shift. So we're kind of coming in and out of it. And so during labor, being able to move in and out with your different laboring positions can be really beneficial to releasing tension within the pelvic floor. Now, it doesn't have to be this big movement. It can just be a little kind of shifting type motion. Let's go ahead and switch to the other side. So I'm putting my right foot onto that block now. I'm going to shift my weight over to that right leg. So again, I can lift my left foot off the floor. Lots of weight in that right big toe, shifting over and then almost like rotating that knee inwards. You can reach across the body, really think of rotating that pelvis on that femur, keeping weight in that right big toe. You should feel a really similar stretching tight sensation in that hip pocket. So we'll be here for about another 15-ish seconds, and then we're going to come into the movement portion. So lots of weight in that right big toe. Really think rotating that pelvis on the femur. Reach both hands forward to extend in the hip and come back. So exhale, come forward, inhale back into that hip shift. And again, it's important that you're able to come in and out of this, moving through it, because this is a really great pelvic floor stretch and relaxation movement that you can do not only during pregnancy, but also during labor. And then again, during labor, it won't be quite this exaggerated. So let's go ahead and grab onto our weight. We're going to come into that lateral hip shift. Now you can do this without weight as well. Feet will be wider than hip distance. Now I'm going to shift towards one leg, feeling more of a stretch in this adductor as I reach for that side. And then I'm going to come to the other side. So we're going to reach across and then shift into the other leg. So again, that pelvis is rotating on the femur. I'm bringing that belly more towards that thigh. And then as I come across, the knee is staying stacked with that ankle. And now if you want to add in a weight, you'll just use the weight to kind of help pull you towards each side. But we want this big rotation in the upper body so you can reach as you row back with the arm. You should feel this big stretch in that glute that you're shifting towards. You should feel this big rotation and twist in the upper body. And this is a slow movement. We're not rushing through it by any means. Go ahead and place that weight down, and let's move on to our archer row. So I'm going to hold the band in my right hand. My left foot is going to step back as my right foot steps forward. And so I'm going to be shifting into my left hip and finding more of a crunch on that left side. Exhale, row that band back as you shift into that left hip. Inhale to reach forward. Exhale, row, crunch into that left side. Inhale, come back. So think lots of weight into the big toes as you come back, both in the left, a little bit into the right foot. As you come back, we're thinking about rotating that pelvis on the femur towards that left thigh. So it should be a really similar sensation in that hip pocket with the hip shift, the lateral hip shift, and now this guy. So this movement is bringing in some upper body rotation as well, similar to the lateral hip shift. So we're activating that left oblique to help pull that rib cage down, to help us create space and stretch that pelvic floor. Let's go ahead and face in the opposite direction. So right leg steps forward, left foot steps back, and now I'm going to be pressing. So it's similar. I'm shifting into that left hip, but now that right side is really emphasizing more of that stretch. Exhale, press forward, shift into that left big toe. Inhale, come back. And we're kind of pressing across the body like you're trying to punch or like spread the upper back across. Think lots of weight shifting into that left foot. Almost as if your pelvis was kind of rotating on top of like a pole or a fixed leg that's not moving at all. My pelvis is kind of shifting as if it was like a bowl on top of a pole. Your ribcage position can impact how you position your pelvis and the tension within your pelvic floor. So these full body kind of rotational exercises can help to improve spinal mobility, which improves pelvic mobility and releases the pelvic floor. Let's start back over with that standing hip shift for one more round. And then you can incorporate these exercises into your daily routine. You can do this full workout. You can just add it in to the exercises that you're doing. We incorporate them all within our prenatal fitness workout. So I'm putting weight into that left foot. I'm going to go ahead and come into my standing hip shift. So I have more weight in that left big toe. Knees kind of rotating inwards. I'm shifting my weight over to the left side and then slight tuck underneath of the pelvis. Again, I can lift up that right leg off the floor and my position would not change a whole ton. Really thinking about bringing that belly more towards the thigh. Reach both hands forward and then come back and shift into that hip. Again, during labor, you may find that you kind of like do these little shifts to help release tension within the pelvic floor. It was something that I utilized to help relax my pelvic floor. Not this exaggerated, but it was just like a shift during my contractions, and it really helped me to release some tension. Let's go ahead and switch sides. So I'm putting my right foot onto the block now, rotating to find my hip shift. Lots of weight in that right big toe. Knee kind of rotates in, and I feel that stretch in that right hip pocket. And so if I look down at my hips, my left hip is a lot lower than my right hip. And so you can reach across your body, really think about pelvis is rotating on that femur, bringing that belly a little bit more towards the thigh. And there'll be a little bit of tweaking that happens here. So you're just kind of like little minor shifts until you find the sensation that you're looking for. Hip shifts definitely do require a lot of exploration. And then reach both hands forward and then come back into that hip shift. So we're coming out of it and then coming right back in. This is going to help to improve your movement recognition of a hip shift. So again, when you're doing other movements that require a hip shift, you can more easily go in and out of it. Let's go ahead and move on to that lateral hip shift now. So again, you can use the weight if you'd like. It can just be body weight as well. So feet are a little bit wider than hip distance. I'm going to reach for one foot. Again, belly is rotating towards that thigh as I reach. And then I'm going to shift to the other side. So reach for one foot, shift over. Upper body is rotating towards the leg that you're shifting towards. You should feel a little bit of a stretch in that inner thigh of the straight leg and more of a stretch in the glute, kind of hip pocket of the bent leg. If you move a little bit deeper, you can grab that weight. It can help a little bit more with that rotation. Bring a little bit of strengthening into the pelvic floor. Really think about keeping weight in that big toe side of the foot on both sides. So as you shift, there's going to be a little bit more weight in the big toe of the weighted leg. And then as you strain, we should still be keeping that big toe down. Let's go ahead and finish up with our archer row and press. And so we'll start with the row on the left side. So left foot steps back, right foot steps a little bit more forward. And for a lot of us, left half is a little bit more forward, right pelvic half a little bit more back. And so this is producing the opposite. Exhale, row, think crunch towards that left side. As you reach with the right, inhale, come back. Lots of weight in the big toes. As you come back, think belly rotating on that thigh. So you feel more of that hip shifted position in that left leg. So a lot of us tend to be a little bit more compressed on that right side, a little bit more extended and flared on that left side. And so this is helping to adjust the upper body position to kind of the opposite of our normal postural tendency. It's helping to strengthen the obliques on the left side, which tend to be a little bit weaker than the right side. Let's go ahead and switch. So face away from your point of attachment. Band is in the right hand, right foot steps forward, left foot is back. And so this movement is incorporating the upper body rotation that's opposite of our normal tendency and how that translates to a rotation on the hips. Exhale, press that right hand forward as you rotate towards that left leg. So lots of weight in the big toes. Inhale, come back. So we're pressing, kind of coming across the body, crunching towards that left side. Lots of weight in the big toes. So this is helping us find a little bit more length on that right side, a little bit more expansion to that right shoulder. And that concludes my pelvic floor birth prep workout that I was doing during the end of my pregnancy to help prepare for birth. And so this workout, we started with that warm-up, which was all about releasing that uneven tension within the pelvic floor. So targeting more of these open hip positions on the right half of the pelvic floor to decrease the activity in it, and stretching more of that left posterior portion to help stretch where it's super tight within my pelvic floor. Both of those types of movements help to relax my pelvic floor, to help my baby's position, and ultimately it resulted in a much faster labor, a really fast pushing phase, and no tearing at all. The second half of the workout was those strengthening exercises to help move your pelvic floor through a range of motion. So we're finding more tension, more length, open to closed hip positions, because strength is not defined by how tight your pelvic floor is, but how well it can move over a range of motion. And so we were incorporating movements that had upper body rotation, hip rotation, and they were a little bit different on each side because we are not symmetrical. We are normally asymmetrical within our body, and so we don't always need the same thing on both sides to achieve the results that we're looking for. If you want more support throughout your pregnancy, check out our online prenatal fitness programs where we incorporate tons of exercises to help you stay comfortable throughout your pregnancy, to prepare for your birth, and to be more comfortable as you navigate your birth and your postpartum period. You can check out our prenatal fitness programs on our website at MamasteFit.com and use code YouTube10 to get 10% off any of our online offerings. And now we have ultimate bundles, which include both prenatal and postnatal fitness plus childbirth education, yoga, pelvic floor prep, birth prep workouts, all in one. And you can save an additional 15% off by bundling it together. And again, use that code YouTube10 to get an additional 10% off.